Hi, everyone. It's Lydia with the Avanti Wellness Podcast and YouTube channel. And today I'm excited to introduce you to our next guest. I'm sitting here with Dr. Jake Felice. Hi, Jake.
Hey, Lydia, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking with our audience about the topics we're going to discuss. And he gave me permission to say we can talk about all kinds of things. So we're going to rapid fire questions
We're going to see
to
how I
him.
handle it live here, Lydia.
He's ready. He told me he was ready. So, to get started, guys, I like to tell you whether or not I know my guest. And in this case, I do not. So, we're going to get to know Dr. Felice together. So, I want to start off by having him introduce himself. Now, Jake, go back a little bit. Give us a little background so we feel like we know who we're talking to. Like, how did you get into the medical field and things like that? Okay.
Great question. I always as a kid knew that I had a healing touch. I learned it from the animals, but my mom was a nurse and back in those days, nurses actually would touch their patients and give massages in the hospitals. And so as a kid, to calm us down, we'd get a little back rub sometime. And then, of
Nice.
course, as kids, we want to trade. And I noticed early on that the animals would come to me a lot more often than they would come to other people. And
Wow.
one of my first experiences with where I really remember understanding touch was with an old German Shepherd. Anyway, so fast forward, as a young man, I was interested in how the mind worked. So I studied psychology at Penn State University. And when I graduated, I decided I was going to go travel. And I went to Asia initially for 1 year. I ended up staying there for 5 years, actually 6 years, because there was a lot of travel involved. But I lived in Nagoya, Japan for 5 of those 6 years. And in Japan, I studied shiatsu, which is the Japanese art. It's a massage art. People frequently call it acupressure. And I did that for 2.5 years. And when I had been progressed long enough, I would practice on friends. And then after a while, friends would get injured and I might be a little busy, so they'd offer to pay me. And so I started actually getting paid to do shiatsu massage in Japan, which I enjoyed. And it also paid pretty well, especially compared to my salary as an English teacher. So, so I decided I needed to get back to the States. I decided I would study massage, and I did that in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as do a professional program. And while I was going through massage school, I read a book by it's called Job's Body. And in the book, they tell a story of an old osteopath who did hands-on healing and did amazing things with his hands. And I said, that's me. I started looking at conventional medical schools. I looked at osteopathic medical schools. And then I remember Mishima Sensei telling me, my shiatsu sensei saying that naturopathic medicine, which is the type of medicine that I've studied and that I have my degree and my licenses in, was, in his opinion, the highest or one of the highest arts of Western medicine. And so ultimately, that's the path that I chose. And I graduated from Bastyr University, which is in Seattle, in '03. And I have been practicing medicine, did my boards, and have been practicing medicine for a long time with that. I have a diverse interests. I'm interested in hands-on therapies, cranial sacral therapies, massage therapies, visceral manipulation. I really gravitate towards the gentle osteopathic arts, but I'm also a big plant guy and a bit of a nutrition geek as well.
Yeah. Now, where are you located now? Where's your practice?
I'm located in Tacoma, Washington, and I will be moving to Whidbey Island this summer. I will be opening a practice in Whidbey Island. Right now, my practice is strictly telemedicine.
Okay.
But starting in probably late August, early September, I will have a brick and mortar clinic and get back to my roots with cranial sacral and visceral manipulation on Whidbey Island.
I will say I've done that once. It was probably 10, no, maybe about 15 years ago with the
The,
cranial sacral
oh, you did?
person.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will tell you that the part where they do your head down like this, it
Mm-hmm.
stretches this part right here. It really hurt, and I was just wondering,
Oh
is that
no.
because of tension in the
It,
body,
I
or is
don't
that
think it should ever be uncomfortable. I
okay?
don't think it should ever
Do
be
you well,
uncomfortable.
even what I just
Massage
did
sometimes can hurt so good, but there should always be an element of pleasant sensation unless it's very intentional, my opinion, and stated by the therapist. This might be a little uncomfortable, but in general, it's a very gentle. With cranial sacral, most of the time we're using about a nickel's worth of pressure on each finger, so not a whole lot of pressure. And one of when we are learning cranial sacral therapy, we're also receiving it. And one of the ways that I know that I have had a good cranial session is first you enter a state of deep relaxation, and then it's you don't notice that you fall asleep, and it's not necessarily a falling asleep, but when the session is over, it's almost like I'm back. And so I think that the meditative or the mindfulness of the cranial sacral therapist and the state of mind of the cranial sacral therapist directly correlates with the experience of the person receiving the therapy. And no two people receive the therapy alike. So the touch, especially for folks who don't get a whole lot of massage, there's really an introductory phase because people, they're just, if you haven't grown up with it, like I said, I grew up with my mom giving us back rubs and rubbing our neck all the time. So I was very comfortable with it. But if you've never had something like that before, it is the onus of the massage practitioner or the cranial sacral therapist or the osteopath or whoever is doing it um, to give a proper introduction to the therapy. So I'm sorry that you had pain with that.
Well, I was just going to say it may be something around the tension, because even when I just did that example to you, I felt the stretch, of my
Uh-huh.
neck. So maybe
Okay.
my neck is not stretched out as much as it should be.
Well, that's certainly frequently the case for a lot of us, especially if we sit in front of computer screens all day.
Right. Yeah, which I do. So, okay. So thank you for your introduction. And initially, when I invited you on the podcast, I found you talking on LinkedIn. That's how I follow you. Wait, are you on like other channels too, or just LinkedIn?
I'm mostly just on LinkedIn. I kind of don't like social media a lot, but I'm realizing I need to do it more to reach out. So
Well,
I need to get. I have a small YouTube presence, so folks can always find me on YouTube.
yeah.
And then I really don't ever. I mean, I have accounts, but I'm really never on Twitter or Instagram, which I probably should be. And I have not even ventured
Don't
into the
don't
TikTok
let that
world.
guilt trip you. Although remember, before we started recording, StreamYard will help you be in all those places at one time. So
I
I'll
need to
talk to
look
you
into
about that
StreamYard
later,
here. I
because
really do.
you can connect to LinkedIn and YouTube and do it, because you do
Okay.
lives, right?
I love to do lives. I'm best. I feel like I really stand out live
Yeah,
because a
yeah.
lot of
So
people are
anyway, we'll
scared to do
talk about
live.
that
Anyway,
later, because you can do it all at the same time and you don't have to double dip and double work. This is the other reason why I like StreamYard. Okay, back to you. So I found you talking about polyphenols that
sure.
day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn, and I want the audience to learn the benefits of why polyphenols are so valuable. And I don't think people talk about them enough. And so I was like, come on my channel and talk about polyphenols.
So polyphenols are a class of plant molecules.
Right. Well, let's start from the basics. Okay. So
Why
definitely,
do plants make polyphenols. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but we'll do this in general. Um, have you ever been to the tropics, Lydia?
Yes.
And did you wear a hat to protect yourself from the sun? Because I do. I'm a surfer, and I get beaten up by the sun.
Oh,
Did you
that's
wear a hat?
funny. Um, y- Probably, yeah. I was in
Okay, okay.
Hawaii. I mean, I'm also one of those people that likes to take the sun in too, so that's
Okay,
not so
okay.
good.
Well, plants don't have the option of getting in or out of the sun. They are either in the sun or they are not in the sun. And when they are in the sun, they can't put on sunscreen. They can't put on a hat. So certain plants have to protect themselves from the ultraviolet rays of the sun, which are the same rays that can give us a suntan, but they can also give us a sunburn, and that can give us skin cancer.
Right.
So, and the reason that the sunburn can give us sun cancer is that the sunlight, the rays of the sun, are creating reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress in the cells of our DNA. Plants cannot get out of the, some plants typically live under the trees and they get shade, but other plants like in the desert are right out there in the bright sun. So the plants have to protect themselves, and one of the ways they protect themselves is they make polyphenols. You may have heard of a polyphenol called resveratrol. It's
Yeah.
present is one of the is present in grapes, in Japanese knotweed, for example. And resveratrol is also a common component of red wine, not white wine. And the purported health benefits of red wine are largely attributed to resveratrol, which is a polyphenol. The polyphenol resveratrol in the plant protects against sun damage in the leaves, and it is a very powerful antioxidant. Well, don't you know, cancer is also caused to a very large degree by these reactive oxygen species that cause oxidative stress and damage to our DNA. And as a result, also, heart disease can be related to this oxidative stress. Neurologic and neurodegenerative diseases can be related to this. And so the plants many times will make these molecules for their own purposes that serve very specific physiologic functions, in this case of resveratrol, an antioxidant. And when we as humans take them, they don't do the exact same thing. So if we drink red wine, I don't like to use that as an example. If we drink grape juice or eat
We
grapes,
current.
we consume the polyphenols in our diet. It doesn't protect us against the sunburn, but it can protect us against reactive oxygen species inside of our cells. So that's the logical reason why many plant molecules actually work as medicines for humans, is because the plants are using them for their own medicinal purposes.
Right. Right. I think olives have a lot of polyphenols in them too, right?
I think
Olive
of
oil.
olives have a lot of good lipids in it, and olive, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. Olive tall is a type of a lipid. And the 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 good healthy lipids through different mechanisms from the polyphenols can help with oxidative stress and have their own anti-inflammatory properties.
Right. Right. Okay.
But
So
certainly olive leaves, and there are olive leaf extracts. I would say, because of where they live, almost certainly will be producing polyphenols. I'm just not as familiar with those. But olive leaf extract, I believe, has some antiviral properties.
what are your favorite polyphenol foods to eat?
My favorites by far are the berries, blueberries, the dark colored berries. Raspberries will have them as well, but not as many. Strawberries as well, but blackberries, blueberries. And these polyphenols are called proanthocyanidins, and they possess antioxidant activity. They have some very good antiviral properties. Elderberry, if you want to Google elderberry and
I'm
antiviral
familiar.
properties, really good protective aspects. But I also like how the blueberry polyphenols have anti-inflammatory properties, and they do this through a slightly different mechanism from how other plants make anti-inflammatories. The blueberry molecules are not themselves anti-inflammatory, but they actually do something called they actually have an activity called epigenetic activity, where they change how our genes, our DNA is producing anti-inflammatory or pro-inflammatory molecules. So they're actually working on a higher organizational level than, say, something like willow bark, which also has wonderful anti-inflammatory properties. But the willow bark, and we should talk about willow next because there's polyphenols in willow, so we can talk about that next. But the willow bark has aspirin-like chemicals that have the anti-inflammatory effects. Now, if you don't mind me continuing on the willow bark, the salicylates in willow bark are the aspirin-like chemicals. And when aspirin was made by Bayer in the early 20th century, it was revolutionary because it worked much faster than the willow did. And so that was how they sold it and they promoted it. You could get relief from your headache in 10 minutes as opposed to an hour and a half or more later with the willow. But what they did was they took the salicylate out of the whole plant matrix. They put it into just a single chemical, and the aspirin is very, very hard on the digestive tract, and it can cause ulcers and it can cause digestive bleeding, and it has a whole host of very
Negative.
damaging negative effects on the stomach lining and the lining of the intestines. So, but willow bark does not, because the willow bark has the aspirin-like molecules in it, but it also contains polyphenols. And the polyphenols in willow cause anti-inflammatory effects in the stomach, and they're also soothing and prevent stomach irritation. So that when we take willow bark for pain, you get an equivalency to the pain relief of an aspirin. It's just a little bit slower, but you don't get the negative stomach or gastric irritative effects. Part of the wisdom of plant medicine is that the plants will utilize multiple chemicals that can create additive or synergistic effects and work together.
I love how things work out. So I haven't taken an aspirin in 21 years. And when I do have any kind of a headache, I have a white willow bark product that I use.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so I
All
love that you
species,
shared that.
white
Yes.
willow contains a particularly large amount of salicylates, but all types of willow contain salicylates, and they don't necessarily taste good, but you can use the leaves of any willow tree, even weeping willow, will have salicylates in it.
I'm too scared to. I took a mushroom class and I look down at when I'm walking my dog and I see a mushroom and I'm like, God, I'm just too scared to
I think you have to be
ever.
careful with mushrooms.
I know, but just talking about taking a leaf off of a plant, I
Mm-hmm,
just can't
mm-hmm.
imagine doing that and eating it. I mean, it's like I'd rather just have an expert tell me this is okay and in a capsule form.
One of the most wonderful things that I think you or any of your audience members may want to try doing is, if somebody in your area is offering a free plant identification course, you should take it.
Yeah.
There are look-alike plants. So there are some plants, for example, there are some plants that look a lot like dandelion, but they're not dandelion.
I just don't trust myself, even with the
Uh-huh.
trusty app. I have an app on my phone called Mushroom Finder, and I'm still
Oh,
not
I would
really
say with
good.
the mushrooms, no, but for the plants, it's much, much easier. The plants, with plants, one of the really ways you key in on a plant is with the flowers. And I would just say that it's um, the average medical doctor knows 30 to 50 drugs, even though there are hundreds of drugs, but they just focus on their one particular area and they have maybe 30 to 50 drugs that they know really well. Um, I have about 50 plants in the Pacific Northwest that I know really well, and they're my friends. And why do I call them my friends? I didn't really used to call them my friends, but I went traveling in Ireland one year, and I was mostly in Dublin, but I got out to a little town outside of Dublin called Glendalough, which is kind of in the mountainous area, and did a lot of hiking in and around there. And guess what I saw? I saw my friends. I saw cleavers and I saw stellaria, and I was like, "Oh, my friends are here." And I know the plants. I knew their medicinal properties, and it was very connecting. Most plants are not poisonous. A lot of mushrooms can be, so you're generally safe. And then with berries, you don't want to eat white berries, but berries that are darker in color are almost always good, and the red ones, they can go either way. So, but it's not necessarily about food foraging, but about our ability to connect with nature. And if we think of plant medicine, one of the most instructive ways to use plant medicines is to see how the animals use them. Birds, for example, will pick specific plants to weave into their nests because of antifungal or antibacterial properties. Birds
Wow.
of prey, for example, that bring back, mice and rats to their young and just leave them there. And not everybody finishes all their bones for dessert, but they will weave in antibacterial plants into the nest to help tone them down. Um, Chimpanzees, for example, and apes, if they have a parasitic infection, will be very specific about which particular plants they eat for their very particular uh, type of a parasite. There's a certain type of a monkey that never eats plants that have tannins in them. And tannins have properties of being able to stop bleeding. So, about 2 or so weeks before the moms are going to give birth, they start to eat plants with tannins in them. So, my point is not to encourage you, Lydia, to take a course, but when we pay attention to our bodies, there can be a feedback for what it is that we're bringing in, and that could be healthy foods or unhealthy foods, healthy supplements, those types of things.
That's a good segue to what we were going to kind of lead into. So, we're going to get back to polyphenols. I want the audience to understand, because I was telling you that I just finished giving a big shot to polyphenols, 9 solid months, drinking my polyphenols every day. And what was in the polyphenols were the red currant,
Oh, okay.
heavy duty, strong polyphenol rich, and the berries.
Hmm.
The one that I liked was raspberry berry melody.
Okay.
So I want to just talk about, why would somebody, a professional, say that in order to lose weight, you want to support your mitochondria, and polyphenols can do that. Let's go down that rabbit hole
Okay.
and help
Paul,
me
Paul,
understand, why are polyphenols helpful in losing weight. Let's talk about that.
let's talk about mitochondria first, and a lot of folks don't know what a mitochondria
Right. Let's
is.
define it
So
for
we
everybody.
have a cell, and a cell is the basic unit of life, and the cells have different, just like our human body has organs. We have a stomach and a liver and heart and kidneys and lungs. Cells have things that are not organs, but they're called organelles. We have organs, cells have organelles, and the organelles do a similar thing to all of the organs in our body. The mitochondria, when I teach folks, and I've taught anatomy and physiology at many different levels, but at the most introductory level, for folks who don't know very much about them, I call them the mighty mitochondria, because the mitochondria are what process our energy. They literally take sugars that plants make and they turn them into energy. And if you've had a bit of biology, the energy currency in our cells is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry, that the mitochondria burn
They're doing it for you.
energy. And just like if you have a furnace at home, the mitochondria are the furnaces of the cell. They create all of the energy, and they can either be efficient burners of calories or inefficient burners. And when calories are burned, just like when the sun causes a sunburn, it causes oxidation and reactive oxygen species. When calories are burned, the calories create reactive oxygen species and oxidation. So when we utilize antioxidant elements that get to the mitochondria, you have a more efficient burning process. And when we do things more efficiently, generally things tend to work better. So that's on the one side. And then you mentioned, I think, on the weight loss side, polyphenols do something very interesting, because they don't always even just work within our own body, they also work within our digestive tract. And what do you mean that's not inside of our body? My stomach is right here. That's inside of me. Well, I'm a giant donut, right? From my mouth all the way through. There's a tube that goes all the way through. So we are all a giant donut. So from a physiologic perspective, the stomach, the esophagus, the intestines are the whole of the donut. And that is technically outside. So the food goes in one side and it comes out the other. And in our large intestine are bacteria, lots, trillions of bacteria. And we have friendly, healthy bacteria. And we also have unfriendly or harmful bacteria. And we can go into that a little bit, but I want to bring the polyphenols back in. Some of the polyphenols will increase our amount of good bacteria. Those good bacteria will make neurotransmitters. Serotonin, for example, is a feel-good neurotransmitter. Over 80% of our body is created. Our serotonin is created by these bacteria, and these bacteria can make us feel good. They can reduce brain fog. They can reduce inflammation. They can impact neurodegeneration, and they can also enhance exercise motivation. Our good bacteria, when we feed them the right polyphenols, can motivate us to exercise. There's good peer-reviewed studies on this. I posted some on my LinkedIn. And when we combine that with an efficient furnace in the mitochondria, really make the burning of energy more efficient and more fun and more enjoyable.
I will say I had that experience when I was eating it, every day. It was like a little brain boost for sure. I mean, I definitely had good experience doing it, and I want to continue. I just don't have any product right now. So
you can also get polyphenols from foods. Green tea, cheers. Green tea is a great source of polyphenols. We mentioned the berries.
Yeah.
Turmeric has wonderful. Turmeric has wonderful polyphenolic properties, and so we can get them through our diets. I am really very partial. I really love the blueberry polyphenols, and I don't know the form that yours came in, but they generally taste delicious too. They're generally very good tasting. I don't
Let's
know.
talk about that because I know they're part of the Dirty Dozen, and I hate the fact that they are. And buying organic, I'm not even sure I trust that. So how are you eating
Oh, the
your?
Dirty Dozen. Yes. So, what do you mean by the Dirty Dozen? Probably your audience knows, but just to rewind, foods that, if they are sprayed with pesticides, can the best foods
Like strawberries is number one.
because they're so easy to get moldy in the supermarket. I mean, how many times have I bought blueberries in the supermarket and I get home, or even in the car, I always watch where does the cashier put the blueberries so I can keep that bag next to me so I can have some in the car. And how many times I've been driving and I go like this and I'm like, oh no, that one's got mold on it, right?
Gross.
So because they're sweet and delicious, they're susceptible to getting mold infections
Also
on them,
pest.
and
Also
pests
pest.
and pests. So the non-organic ones are sprayed up until almost the very last minute before harvest, and the standard line is that, oh, they break down, or oh, you're supposed to wash them first before you eat them. Yes, you should, because especially if they're not organic, you should definitely wash the berries. But what I like to do with the berries as food is get them home, rinse them real quick, uh, dry them off either in the colander, or the clear containers have holes so you can just leave them in there, and then I pop them right in the freezer. Frozen berries are one. Most foods, when we freeze them, lose a little bit of their nutritional value, but berries actually have a slightly increased nutritional value when they are frozen, because when things freeze, the water expands a little bit and it cracks open those cells with those proanthocyanidins in the blueberry. And so frozen berries, and the berries in their natural state will frequently, they will winter. The snows will come, especially up in Canada with the northern berries. I'm thinking thimbleberries and some of the other really delicious. They're not coming to mind yet, but berries are not afraid of being frozen. So anyway,
I
and
know.
you mentioned the pesticides. So you definitely want to be getting organic berries, or if you're getting a product with berry flavonoids in it, have them be organically sourced.
Absolutely. My mom is a super healthy plant based person. She's 87 and she still works, and she's awesome. She changed her life by going plant based, and she buys the frozen blueberries organic at Costco in the bags
Oh
and
yeah,
then uses them every day.
sometimes the frozen ones are actually more affordable than the fresh ones too,
Yeah.
especially if they're organic.
Yeah, yeah. So, what before we go into something else, I want to go back to turmeric. Do you eat turmeric, and how do you get it in your diet if you
I'll
do?
do it in a turmeric tea, or I have a shake product that I use that has turmeric in it. And uh, turmeric has variable absorption. So the one, depending on how it's formulated, but if you take turmeric with black pepper, doesn't sound great, does it? But it actually tastes pretty good. Um, the black pepper will enhance absorption because black pepper has pepperine, which will enhance the absorption of the turmeric. So
That's
I have a
interesting.
I have a
Okay.
shake that I use. I do it most days. It also has rice and pea protein. I don't use a whey or
Right. You like
uh,
plant based?
I personally, this physiology does real well with plant based.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I know a lot of people who have had healed experiences going plant based, and I plan on being plant based one day. I'm still eating
Oh, when
my,
I eat out though, when I eat it, I don't, I think I've cooked chicken maybe twice in 2 years at home. and no other. I'll maybe reheated a pork chop if somebody gave me a leftover or something like that. But I don't really cook meat at home. But when I go out to eat, or if I go out to friends' places, that's when I eat meats.
Yeah,
I
you're not a
my
stickler.
my brother is on the opposite side of me in terms of
Oh, he eats a
he
lot
has
of
a
meat. You
he's
can throw
we
him
love
under the
each other, so
bus.
I can say this, but he has a bumper sticker on his truck that says, "I love animals, they're delicious." And I think that's one of the best arguments in favor of eating meat, is that it tastes good. I think that's one of the best arguments in favor. I know that you can make the protein arguments, and then I know there are a lot of people that say, "Oh, there are negative chemicals in plants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." But I always think that the best argument in favor of eating meat is it's delicious. Is it not? I think it is.
The thing is when I mean, I don't really do the protein argument, but I think what you're referring to is people argue that you need protein to be protein, and the truth is that all the largest animals, the gorilla and the rhino and the elephant and the big ox and all the heavy muscular animals are all plant-based eaters. So when we eat protein, we have to break it down to an amino acid form just to take it in the body.
Well, I think that there's in the states protein malnutrition is very rare. I've seen it a few times in a male with an eating disorder. I saw it. It was the first time I was like, oh my goodness, he has a protein deficiency. But it's usually typically very rare. But this particular patient had an eating disorder as a man, and
Are you saying they weren't eating protein
he was
like
not
meat?
eating he was starving himself, and he didn't
Okay.
have enough protein. But the vast majority of us do have enough protein, at least according to USRDA. And I don't think protein deficiency is a thing. One thing though, for kidneys, is it is hard for kidneys to produce or to process nitrogen sometimes. And nitrogen is one of the main components of protein. So if you're getting a huge amount of protein in your diet and you have certain types of kidney disease, that can be not good for you.
Okay.
Or just if you have weak kidneys in general, a high protein diet might not be a great option for you. And again, when we're dealing with these degrees of specificity with medical conditions, a medical nutritionist or a nephrologist will have specific dietary recommendations. But my point is that high protein diet can be troublesome for some people.
Okay. Let's go back to the weight loss related to polyphenols. So basically, here's where we're at. The polyphenols enhance the mitochondria's ability to function. So you utilize every more of what you eat, because what I was told in the person I told you was teaching me is that you can heal your mitochondria to work better, and so then you can utilize more of the foods that you do eat, like whatever they are. If they're a piece of cake, you're utilizing that more because your mitochondria is working. What do you say about that? Do you know anything about that?
I think you want, when you're supporting mitochondria, I think you want to support both the water compartment and the lipid compartment of the mitochondria. If you look at how it's shaped, it's kind of like a bean with lines in it. And so the polyphenols do a very good job with the water compartment piece. Lipid support with good healthy lipids is always important. CoQ10 can be an important factor, especially for heart mitochondria. And also exercise, regular exercise can increase mitochondrial populations. Um,
Oh,
yes,
wow. Increase the mitochondria in your body?
increase the numbers. When we
Wow.
develop more exercise tolerance, and also the muscle at rest, because muscle have a lot of mitochondria, and then the muscle at rest, the more mitochondria we have, the more muscle we have, the higher our metabolism, and they're just burning calories all of the time. Now, I do want to say this because your listeners might be interested, but one thing that is really cool about mitochondria have their own DNA. They're different than our regular DNA.
Hmm.
The mitochondrial DNA come only from the mom. They're
Oh.
maternal. So our mitochondrial DNA gives us a whole history of the DNA comes directly from the maternal lineage. It's
I
very
did not
fascinating.
know
Yeah,
that.
that's why I thought I'd mention it. It's a cool thing about
That is
mitochondria. A
so
lot of people don't know.
fascinating. I mean, when I look at my grandmother, my mom's side of my family,
Yep.
I have a lot of her hereditary type traits. Like I have a
Okay.
good heart. I have a good heart. I don't take
Oh,
any
good.
medication, and so she was like that. But we were also very happy people, you know. So I
Uh-huh.
think there's a lot to be said
Oh,
about your
yeah.
attitude, right?
Let's talk about heart and attitude. The heart is innervated by the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It innervates our lungs, our heart, and our digestive tract and intestines. Polyphenols can enhance friendly gut bacteria. The friendly gut bacteria actually talk directly to the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve talks to the bacteria. It's two-way communication, and that's one of the ways that it can produce a sense of ease and a decrease of anxiety. And the vagus nerve governs a lot of our tension. So breath and breathing exercises can release and reduce tension. But a heart that is joyful has an openness to it. The musculature, the flexor muscles are loosened, the extensors are shortened. The posture of joy is different than sorrow. Look what happens when we score a touchdown or a soccer goal. Versus the most horrific thing happens to us, we go into fetal position. So this concept of extension, which is heart opening, and flexion, which is emotionally closed, can be a direct function of our fight or flight versus our rest and digest fluctuations in our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So a joyful heart is going to have more openness. It is going to have better capacity through breathing. Those actually the pressure of the diaphragm going up and down has impact on how the heart functions. With each single breath, it gets down to that type of a minutia. So a joyful attitude can tend to be good for the heart just because it opens things up and lets things flow. And I think we all know that intuitively. And I always, the other thing I learned is that when we do things that are, I learned this from cranial sacral and doing cranial sacral a lot, is to be really tuned in to when we are having a positive relaxation response versus when we are having a stress response. And what I particularly have noticed with myself is my mom loved taking us to McDonald's because she didn't have to cook. And when she took my brother and I, we were little enough, she'd get one cheeseburger and cut it in half, and we'd each eat half of it, and there would be no dishes. And so I have a bit of a food addiction to McDonald's. Every time I surf a lot, and every time I'm on a road trip, I see those golden arches. See those golden arches. I love McDonald's. When I go and I eat, and confession, I had McDonald's this last weekend because I was on a road trip. I felt like crap for 2 days afterwards, and I am beginning to
Because you're eating
realize.
petroleum.
Well, I'm beginning to realize, and at first I thought, oh, I'm worried about this, and oh, I'm worried about that. Well, yeah, I was worried about this, and I was worried about that. But the reason I was worried was not because something changed in my external environment, but because something changed in my internal environment.
Right.
And then that made me worry about these things that I know are going on. We all have problems going on, but isn't it true? Sometimes they bother us less, sometimes they bother us more. So our physiology, one of the best reasons to take care of our physiology is because it can bring us that sense of joy. It can bring us that sense of laughter. And when you start to make those connections between what we are doing to our body that is good for us versus when we are doing things that are classically bad for us, usually when we're doing things bad for us, like, oh my goodness, I got to get over to McDonald's.
You're happy.
I'm stressed. I'm stressed. And I want to relieve that stress with a quick fix of French fries. Because once those French fries are in my mouth, I'm happy. But 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes later, those French fries aren't in my mouth anymore.
And you feel
And
like crap.
yeah.
And you're greasy the next day, right? Your
Oh
face
my goodness. Yeah.
and inflamed. Oh
All
my
of
gosh,
that.
I'm gonna have to put a trigger warning on this podcast.
Sorry about that,
No,
Lydia.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. We've been talking for 45 minutes, so I'm going to say this one thing, and then if you ever want to come back, there's so many topics I bet you could talk about. One of them would be fun to just talk about the importance of your mind related to your health, because I think that I want the name of my podcast is Avanti Wellness, but it's about balancing mind, body, and spirit.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh
basically,
yeah.
all those things matter. If you want to be healthy, having a joyful heart, being happy, taking time to move your body, like all these things are part of the formula. It's not just
It is.
taking,
And we
it's
go
not
to
just eating blueberries.
not it is not, but that's a good place to start. And and but you're absolutely right. And say for example, it takes the average person in our culture 13 years to graduate from high school. We got kindergarten and 12 other years. We have a lot to learn about caring for ourselves. And if you are at a third grade level of, because for whatever reason in your life, you can't immediately skip to the 11th grade. So there is a process to go through, but it is completely doable. And what is the alternative option? And on the body, mind, and spirit thing, of course, we all want to have a joyful heart and we want to be self-expressive and be our own authentic, expressive selves in the world. If I have regrets, if I have done terrible things to another person, if I have had trauma that has been done to me, and I have not processed that because I couldn't, because I didn't have the tools, or because I was a kid. We could talk about, I had an experience. It's not time to do that now. But these things that we have regrets, we can make amends. That's a spiritual process,
Clear
and you
them.
can and will feel better. But there's a skill to all of this, and
And
I
there's
think
an investment of time, because
yes,
it
there
takes a
is.
lot of time and you got to be willing to go there. I want to share this last thought before we say goodbye to you. I want to tell you something that maybe will change your mind about McDonald's. It definitely had an impact on me. I used to date this guy, and he worked for a petroleum refinery here in the Houston area, which is, there's a lot of oil and gas refineries where they come out of the Gulf, the oil does, and then they refine them, and then they put them on tanker trucks and trains and stuff and push them up to Washington, right?
I know a
So
lot of the guys that work the rigs out there,
yeah,
Corpus Christi, and get off
yeah.
at
So listen
midnight.
to what he told me. He worked in this factory, and he was like, our oil, our refined product goes I mean, he didn't even flinch when he said this, and my jaw just dropped. He just said, our product goes into lycra, spandex pants, and all the way into footballs and hamburgers. And I was like, what? Like, in the petroleum product, a part of it is utilized to stabilize the processed meats. So when you're, eating a fast food hamburger, that had to get stabilized with oil, and sometimes they use it with petroleum products.
Well, I don't know that, but I do know that there are preservatives that make those French fries last a long time. I vacuumed my car out the other day, and I think I found a French fry that I left down there in like 2007 or something like that, and I didn't eat it, but it was still a lot. It was not moldy, or it just so. But back to the mitochondria, and I know we got to go, but those lipids the negative lipids affect the mitochondria just like in the opposite way that the positive ones do. So just something for your viewers to think about, that the good healthy lipids.
Wait, where are the negative lipids coming from so that we
Well,
can avoid
usually
them?
they come from
Like seed
usually
oil.
our arachidonic acid, which is present usually in a lot of animal fats, for example.
Oh.
As opposed to more omega-3s, which are in cold water fish. But a high
What do you think about safflower oil? You know, they say a lot of the seed oils are not that good for you.
I don't think a lot of the seed oils are great. I think for cooking, I think olive oil is fantastic. It doesn't cook at a high temperature,
Yeah. And
but you don't really need
avocado, right? And
avocado is mixed. Those medium chain triglycerides in avocado have a lot of positives. For high heat cooking, I actually like clarified butter, believe it or not.
Okay. Yeah.
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 It's also is ghee,
Yeah. And
clarified butter. But if
ghee.
you want, if
Right.
you need something really hot, it's good for that. But otherwise, I like olive oil. And if I'm doing a stir fry at the end, not in the beginning, I'll do olive oil. But at the very end, I'll turn up the heat and I'll put in a little toasted sesame oil, because, man, that just makes everything pop and the whole thing smells good.
Of course you want the
Hey,
olive
prego,
oil. I
prego.
forgot that you're Italiano.
Yes, indeed.
They cook. I mean, I lived in Italy, and they cook with olive oil everything.
A lot of olive oil. A lot
Yeah,
of
I
olive
don't
oil.
think they don't flash it though. They don't get it really hot. They like
You
slow
can't.
bring up the heat.
Yeah, you bring it up slowly and you don't ever get it too hot, but you can still brown things. It's a slower process, but I like cooking is a meditative thing for me, and it's also a creative act. So, and everybody can learn how to do something simple.
Right. And I'm hoping on the channel, I'm just bringing conversations up that, you know, a lot of things people already know, but maybe there's that one thing that they didn't know. And there was something you said today. Oh, number one, I love the idea that I'm part of my mom's
Oh yeah,
mitochondria.
the
That's
maternal
awesome.
lineage is right there. It's the powerhouse of our cells.
But it also makes sense because, like, my dad was real skinny and he could eat all kinds of crap and still be skinny. And then, like, I have my mom's body, you know, and her mom's body and her mom's body.
All of that. Yep.
So
Fascinating, isn't it?
yeah. So does that mean you have your mom's mitochondria?
I have my mom's and my grandma's and my great grandma's, all of that mitochondria.
How come the men don't transfer mitochondria?
Because it is on the specific allele of the chromosome that comes from the woman.
That is so. I guess part of the what is it? The X chromosomes.
Yeah.
Anyway, oh my gosh, that was so fun. Thank you so much for your time. Is there
My
anything? Tell everybody how they can find you. What
Google
is your
my
website?
name. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm doing daily videos on LinkedIn, and then I post them on YouTube. So go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. And once I get set up on StreamYard, I'll be broadcasting live across all platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned.
I'll send you a referral link and get you $25 off.
Oh, hey, that's awesome.
Wait, question. But what is the name of your channel? Do they just search your name?
Just search my name right now, and then I will be moving into Sweetwater Holistic, but we are, the website should be done by the end of this week, hopefully.
Okay.
Weekend at the latest, but just look for me, Dr. Jake Felice.
And that's Felice.
Yes, looks like Felice, but as we know from our Italian pronunciation, Lydia, it's Felice.
Felice.
Yes,
that's right. So, thank you so much for your time today, and it was fun, and I loved learning new things. So, thank you for saying yes when I asked you to be on the podcast today. And if you ever want to come back and you want to talk about something, just reach out and we'll get you on the show again.
Thank you, Lydia. I'd love to.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.